Hello.
Hello.
How many years have you been a contact?
Since 2010th year, since the fall, I have had an information channel, and since that time I have been a channel.
And what is channeling?
Receiving information through states, through different information fields, which are fed through sound vibration, and thus, being in the flow, I receive information from different fields.
How do you have this channeling process going on?
Russian, I receive a sound vibration, which is called the galactic language, and accordingly, I translate it into Russian and submit information already in Russian.
So you are essentially such a walkie-talkie.
Can say so.
And you, this information flow, this galactic language, do you hear it, or do you somehow set yourself up that it just passes through you?
I'm not setting myself up in any way. This happens in a stream 24 hours a day. At any time, you can join this thread and be in this streaming state. As for the information, I accept it through sound, and through sound states, there is a translation in parallel with the received sound, and I reproduce the text already.
Russian, do you hear both galactic language and Russian at the same time, or do you interpret it into Russian yourself?
I hear sounds, I pronounce them, and the translation immediately comes. Everything goes in parallel.
In other words, do you hear the translation and pronounce it in parallel?
But at this time my mind turns on. I am in a flow, and sometimes I do not understand what I am talking about. But at the same time, I clearly state the information requested by people.
And what do you feel at the same time, during the channel, the opening of the channel?
The sensations are free, absolutely indistinguishable from how I am talking to you now, but the flow is felt. It feels like a state of free mind, a state of some kind of relaxation. But at the same time, I clearly understand that I am not saying this.
And who is talking to us at all then?
Now I get the information system through higher powers. The higher forces are the civilizations of the 11th density, which gives me sound vibrational codes, and through these codes, I already receive both translation and a sound state. In other words, these are sound vibrations, which in translation give us our adapted language already.
And why do these higher forces work through such sound codes?
This is explained by the fact that I have such a reception transmitter. Well, it's so very convenient for me, and it's really so convenient for me, because earlier I was on the channel with Seraphim of Sarov. This is the teaching system of the egregor of orthodoxy, and today it's more convenient for me to communicate with civilization, because the mind does not participate in this process, and I give in the flow absolutely all the information, without including your consciousness at the same time.
It turns out that you were trained in some way in order to activate the sound channel in this way.
Initially, the teacher's system in the form of Seraphim of Sarov, the holy Orthodox egregor, gave information through writing. I first wrote out the text on a piece of paper, and then pronounced it. After that, certain fields were developed, and these fields were formed for 3 or 4 years. I can't remember for sure, and when I had already worked out the field, I was given the opportunity to enter more active fields. These are already higher civilizations that now give information and guide people.
But why do you think higher powers are contacting us?
But they explain this so that humanity develops and helps to pass their lives more qualitatively.
Are you fully aware of, understand the information that comes to you and is transmitted through you?
No, probably not, because consciousness is not included in the flow process, and very little information is absorbed during transmission. Therefore, I probably do not engage in this process with my mind, and very few memorizing processes occur, because it is more convenient for me to be in the flow, and not be involved in this process, and not give myself up to this state. I just hand over this tool for the job.
Are these higher powers always in touch with you, or do you somehow consciously get out, connect?
To date, I can consciously turn on, turn off. They're used to be more complex processes. It was about 5 years ago, when we were constantly in the information field, and gave constant information, but today, I can switch off freely, get involved in these processes, and at the same time feel calmer.
Do you get information here on request on your own, or someone else's? Or does it happen that you are given this information at your discretion?
It happens that most often on request, of course, but sometimes I grab the fields and pass some information if necessary.
How did your family and friends react to what happened to you? And maybe you remember how you first got in touch through the galactic language.
Well, as for the family, not immediately, of course. Everyone turned on. Children freely accepted information. Today they consider this to be the norm of the state, and in general. At those moments of time they also believed that this was the norm, and as for the family as a whole, they went through a difficult process, because initially this state was one thing, then it absolutely became another, and, accordingly, they perceived me hard, and did not understand what was happening at all with my consciousness. Maybe it's a disease, maybe it's some kind of mental abnormalities, because this agalactic language appeared out of the blue, and at the same time, I have never absolutely sought to know your future, and have never encountered these processes.
And friends, how did they react to?
Some people reacted positively, very interested. Until now, they are also in development. Some of the people moved away, and because I was engaged in business processes, naturally for them, I became different, alien, and was perceived differently in my new state.
But after what event did you have this connection to high?
It happened suddenly because of surgery, because of the disease. It happened before connecting, as civilizations explain, because it was necessary to reset me, so they brought me into this state, and through this state, after I joined the process without a conscious state, they gave me chronicles. I began to develop myself through these channels, and accordingly, people are being developed now.
That is, in fact, you survived a coma.
Yes.
And how long have you been in a coma here?
A short time. It was short-lived, and this state was so incomprehensible to me until now, because the state of transition from one program to another, it was so fast, and the awareness of it was not particularly strengthened, because the process was fast enough. It was one for 2 days. It became another, and the process of reformatting, transformation happened very quickly.
That is, it turns out that before this case, you were practically a different person, as it were.
I have never been a completely different person, nor have I been interested in the topic of esotericism. And I was engaged in business, and I was not interested in these topics at all, and I did not believe in it.
And now?
Well, now I believe it.
Well, in general, how has your life changed since it opened?
Finally changed. First of all, the environment has changed, the state of consciousness has changed, the illusion of the inner state, the external world has changed in general.
Do you consider it a gift, what you have discovered?
Probably not. I consider this as a kind of my mission today, and accepting my condition. I could not accept it for a long time, and maybe a year later. A year ago, I only realized that for what and why my system was created, and why the soul performs such processes in the world.
And can you share now, that's what you realized a year ago, why did this happen?
I see the changes of people that they came to initially and what is happening to them now. And naturally the development and awareness that occurs in a person. It is visible, it manifests itself, and the person changes dramatically. And the main goal is naturally development and only development.
Are you asking about your future?
Yes, there are times when you need to ask something, or there is a burden on the soul, and you need to find a certain way out. It happens, but rarely. I rarely use my channel for the benefit of my goals. I'm trying to cope more by myself, to go through this experience and to understand why, and why certain situations were created.
But if you are tempted to use access to essentially any information, to the information field in your own interests, do such situations often arise?
There is no particular temptation, but there are situations when I really use my channel for my own purposes. I need to find something, or children use the same channel. So yes, there are such moments.
And how are things located?
Yes. Purely domestic issues that need to be resolved here and now, so this is happening. Sometimes it all happens instantly.
Does it happen that your abilities interfere with your daily life?
I won't say that they are hindered, but they take up a lot of time, and there is very little time left for my personal life, for my family, so I am all about work.
Can you tell the pros and cons of being a chandler?
You probably know that there are no special disadvantages. The only downside is that we have to restore energy, and there is a strong depletion of the field, and they are only pluses.
And what is the main reason for exhaustion?
And I take a lot of people very much, and from here, accordingly, exhaustion occurs.
And how many people on average per day do you receive individually?
From 30 to 50 people.
And how do you cope with such a flow of people?
While they are giving me an energy field, while I am coping, higher forces are helping me, pumping my centers. In the morning, every morning, they help me recover. At night, they help me recover. So I get tremendous help from above.
Please tell me, what questions do people most often come to you individually?
Questions of a dirty order both on health and on energy fields, and on a condition on development. To a greater extent, the current state of the question is how to develop, how to activate yourself, and what needs to be done in order to be energy intensive. Earlier, of course, the issues were more earthly, but now the level of people has come to the conclusion that, after all, development is the main thing in order to pass a quality life, and awareness counts these fields, and at the same time, people only strive to develop in order to find themselves in the world more in a quality life.
Well, is it hard to cope already, to work with such a flow of people?
It can be hard, yes.
How many hours do you sleep?
There have been very few 6-7 hours lately. I've been recovering 4, 5, or 6 months lately.
If specifically, what questions do people come to you with, then and now what trend do you see?
But now we are in transition, and people mostly ask questions about the transition. What is needed for this? How to adapt themselves in a new field? What needs to be done in order to move faster? And how to raise their energy field accordingly, and accordingly, there are explanations in order to move more actively and quickly into these fields. As for the earthly programs, they are of an absolutely different order, and to a greater extent, they are still interested in the body, spirit, and energy. Few people are already interested in terrestrial programs.
And what did they come to you with before?
Previously, they came mainly for earthly matters. The level and state of consciousness of people has changed dramatically over the past 5 years. They observe significant changes in people's awareness, because the people who came 7 years ago and now are the same people. They are of a completely different level of consciousness.
How do you understand what a transition is?
Everything is changing. The environment is changing dramatically. The quality of life is changing. The programs that we call life are changing. And you will feel it yourself, because the cardinal changes are absolutely different polarities of life.
But from the point of view of the overall process, how do you understand what a transition is?
The state is more blissful, more comfortable, cozy. The state is more interesting. Another interesting process is manifested in terms of the interest of life. And new goals and tasks are being built, which, accordingly, they are no longer so material, earthly, but which already work for the state of your inner state of mind.
What goals and objectives do you have now?
Is the external order connected with people?
Not their own, yours.
Well, to achieve certain states of awareness and study new programs, first of all, as for some new states, to study some practices that give the almighty strength in order to preserve youth, maintain your cells, your energy. This process of learning practices gives new strength, opportunities, and new interests.
As you understand, in other words, this transition is essentially into a new dimension, a new reality. For what is it happening now?
For the quality of life, first of all, people, realizing themselves already in a new format, perceive themselves, the environment, and the world as a whole in a different way, which is what I am going through with you now.
The brightest moments that you have started to experience, and how long have you, well, you can say, moved on or in transition?
The moments are different. Firstly, the feeling of energy monopoly, the feeling of the inner state of the soul. It is absolutely different because earlier, when a person lives and understands that he eats, drinks, and in general, his whole life, well, maybe he travels, but in fact, there are a lot of interesting moments, a lot of very interesting programs that make it possible to enter a new conscious state, and at the same time both the body and the spirit, and the state of awareness. It becomes completely different.
And how do you feel? Are you yourself in a conscious state?
You know, in fact, awareness is present as a field, but if we talk about how the mind program system works, it is partially disabled, because I am so used to being on the channel that this is life for me now.
Well, in other words, you are on the channel essentially 24 hours a day.
Yes, constantly.
And for you not to provide some effort, well, to connect and exit it.
Absolutely no effort. I can't even imagine life without a channel right now, because there was a moment in my life when they disconnected me from the channel for a day for a number of reasons, and I felt like an absolutely empty body that didn't understand what to do and where to run at all, and that at the same time I experienced it only emptiness.
Here you are now in contact with the 11th density civilization of Hamilia.
Yes, it is.
Can you please tell me what the 11th density is, as you understand, and why exactly did you have such a connection with Hamilia?
In fact, again, all the information comes from higher powers, and I previously had no understanding at all that there are some otherworldly forces, some other worlds, and so on. All this study and all this knowledge came precisely from Hamilia, and she gives me and people a lot of knowledge, and opens up new states of awareness. The information is very valuable for me in terms of development and in terms of generally considering the world as the earth, as my attitude to this world. Therefore, to say whether it is beneficial, yes, definitely. The fact that it was this civilization that entered my field is indicated by the fact that I am a tool for work. They call me that in order to develop humanity, including every soul comes to this world for something, and it is given for my development, and for the development of people as a whole. Therefore, it is very comfortable for me to be in the vibration of the sound supply, and I translate the galactic language very comfortably, because I have had experience with different civilizations to connect two channels, and this vibration is more acceptable to me and more adapted already, because I have been in this state for many years, and I can freely contact and receive information at any time of the day.
Civilization last name, what is it? How do you feel it, you know?
It's not that I understand, I feel it. I am just in the flow, and there is no such understanding that I feel it physically somehow or energetically. Naturally, I feel it because I am always in the presence of this field. And what happens to me? I just relax my mouth, tongue, and give out these vibrational signals, and decode with the help of these sounds, and give our sound signal already. That is, our words, our letters, our speech explain this by the fact that when a person comes to Earth, he begins to write. He begins to study the sounds of the letter in the same way that happens with me. I also entered this channel with civilization in the same way. Initially, I spoke only with sounds and did not receive a translation. After I have worked out the field, I have gone through more active processes, and now the translation is absolutely free, and I am in my field. And for me, it is already my native language.
How long have you been pumping yourself, your speech apparatus and consciousness, from sounds to translation?
The fact is that I had no teacher at all at that time, and the teacher was only Seraphim of Sarov, who guided me and directed me to different places of power, to different states. That is, I also studied and wrote energy, as it is happening with my students now, so I worked out certain fields. I didn't quite understand why it was necessary at that time many years ago. It was just like a process for me, but today there is an understanding of what it is being done for, how these processes are going, but that's all it goes through experience, and understanding comes after many years. Therefore, I understand what I am doing today, both for myself and for people, and I naturally did not read such processes before, and that was also a difficulty for me, and today I am very comfortable being in the field, and I accept myself as I am, although for many years, 5 or 6 years, I did not understand what was happening at all, because I had never encountered such conditions. Naturally, no one prompted me, because I was going through the experience only myself, and with the help of my teacher, I moved and listened. What they said, she did, and today, I have come to this conscious path, and have been in this state for 8 years.
You said that you have students. What do you teach them, and how does this process happen?
There are a lot of students. In fact, I did not understand initially why such processes take place, to open channels on purpose, because this is a complex process, and it is still difficult for me. It is not easy in terms of the fact that this is both a physical state of wear and energy very much worn out, and I didn't understand the people who are still trying to go to the channel and get some goodness from this channel. But the fact is that everyone sets their own goals and objectives. Everyone has their own call, the inner call of the soul. And to say that this is bad or good, everyone goes their own way, finds themselves in it. I'm still in the process. That is, I study, I know, and I am in observation.
Well, how many contacts have you already activated, approximately?
A lot. I can't say how many, but you can see those people. those students on my websites. They will appear soon, those people who I can definitely say that they are open. They are my students. And there is a lot of information going around now that some people are my students. Of course, you can't remember all of them, but the ones that I will designate means that these people are really on the channel, and they really see, hear, are direct participants in these processes, and you will certainly know about it.
Can we say that channel contact is like a profession of the future?
Civilization is said to be the profession of the future because almost every 10th person will have a higher self-unpacking in order to receive information through higher fields, and that improves the quality of life of each person, respectively, and a lot of people will open up. But the question is how they will open up either for themselves or it will be done in order to activate people as a whole, to direct everything for the benefit of improving the quality of life, and in order to increase the level of quality of life, respectively, and the growth of the energy fields of souls. It must be appropriate. Therefore, now, first of all, as civilizations give information, it is primarily an increase in their vibration in order to get as much as possible into resource programs and get results from these fields.
Please tell us what inspires and motivates you personally right now.
I see how people change, and probably the main motivation is that people change.
But how do they change?
Oh, I'm going to cry.
Irina, do you see people, their processes of changes?
Yes, of course people change, and I must say they change in a positive way. They change the quality of their life, and their nutrition, and their condition, their awareness. They have interests to develop both in terms of body and spirit, and their energy, so cardinal changes are observed in people.
And you yourself now, here is your diet, or here is your condition. It is different compared to.
Yes, of course. I used to love meat very much. There was meat. I even took alcohol periodically in the form of wine there, but today it is naturally excluded, because the energy field is not the same, consciousness is different, and accordingly, the level of quality of life is completely different. Therefore, absolutely different nutrition. I take more resource-based food, I take a lot of water, which has not passed in such an experience before, and in general, the condition has improved, both the energy and the physical feeling of feeling more cheerful.
What do you think is the meaning of life in general?
Probably in development. If we talk about what I drank, I ate, and that's all and nothing more. Watched TV, maybe traveled. Probably, this is not the meaning of life. I see in the development, in newer programs, the field opens up and therefore, you feel like a completely different person, in a different awareness, and a different perception of the world occurs in consciousness. Accordingly, the circle of people is changing, and new interests are emerging. Therefore, the quality of life is much improved.
What kind of people are around you now?
People are absolutely those who understand this process, the process of development, the process of their existence on Earth, and striving to develop their consciousness, aid the spirit, and more resource programs that give more interesting states of consciousness.
Are there such moments when you succumb to emotions and worry?
I am a human being, of course. I am emotional. I work. I also meditate, and also work on myself together with you.
Is it working?
Yes. At least there is a difference.
So you were more emotional before.
I was very emotional. I had such a thing in my life, that I was engaged in business and was in a destructive system. This is a nightclub. These are destructive programs that knocked out of the rhythm of life and brought only to an emotional state. And I came to the conclusion that I could not control my emotions at all in principle. But now there is a completely different state of mind, inner peace, and an internal system such that it allows me not to go into emotions and find the causes of those emotions which arise. And awareness is already included in these processes. And you look at resources, what is happening around you in a completely different way.
There are no moments when you want to go back to your old life.
No.
In other words, are you, in principle, happy with your life now?
I can't imagine myself in business now. I can't imagine myself in this destructive state, because everything that is called life really happens with emotions, and in order to approach these states qualitatively, consciously, you need to first of all find peace in yourself, and to find peace is only development.
People come and they open up, and do you take these people's life stories to heart?
Previously, I really accepted and experienced very great experiences in terms of different states, experienced tears, some internal processes, could not sleep, and so on. Now it is more and more easily accepted, because I understand why events are given, how they are transformed, and what kind of people become after these events. Therefore, this process is taken as a kind of complex process of time in order to rebuild a person and give a new awareness, going through various difficulties.
I know that completely different people communicate with you, communicate and consult, both simple and very successful.
Yes, the level of people is absolutely different, and I have absolutely the same attitude towards, say, a person. And there are stars and people with a high level of consciousness. There are also people with a low level of consciousness who are trying to develop. Therefore, welcome to come, and we will develop together. And I study with you and find myself in each process, too, a certain experience for me. And I also draw an analogy, also connect to the channel, and find ways to interact solutions through the channel. Looking at you, I understand the definition of the situation. When they come to me, it means that they have to work something out for me accordingly. And so we all learn and find ourselves in a state of constant awareness process.
What do you think is the difference between successful people in the social sense from unsuccessful ones who failed in life?
Most often, more successful people come to practices, and their level of consciousness, having already gained experience of earthly fields, having worked out their different states, and gaining experience, they come to development. When a person becomes uninterested in the range of tasks that they define in their field, that is, in their life, they move to a higher level and, accordingly, they strive for development. Therefore, to say that when a person comes and why everyone has their own time and their own condition gives them this path.
That is, first you need to realize the results of earthly programs, and then communicate.
In practice, yes, there are people who really understand that if I don't work on myself, I won't get a result, and there are a lot of such people too. Accordingly, if consciousness already perceives that it is necessary to develop in order to get a different quality of life, then, accordingly, such people come who develop and receive, respectively, a different level of quality of life.
But what is the quality of life for you? What moments are important to you?
I am currently in the flow. I do not twitch. I do not worry. I freely accept every state of the events that are given to me. And of course, it's easier for me in this regard. I don't turn on the level of consciousness. I just accept, because there is an understanding of what each event is given for. And I am in the flow, and at the same time I do not go into emotions. Most often I understand and accept what is happening. Previously, of course, the quality of life was only because it was different, only because I went into emotions, did not understand what to do with it, and worked through it again, and at the same time, consciousness did not grow, and, accordingly, I worked through the same program several times. Therefore, I recommend everyone to pass the experience, let it be difficult, but at the same time, each experience will give you a new state and a new level of development.
You are approached by people who are very well known, and in some way close the question about the confidentiality of communication with you.
In fact, confidentiality is preserved because the higher powers initially signed the main contract. They warned that in no case should information leave the fields. Therefore, it is absolutely what happens between me and a person and the information that I possess at that moment, while I accept people. Naturally, I have few memorizing processes going on, but when I am in the channel, and for the most part, I do not remember what is happening, and naturally I do not give out on the external to the external state of people, so that they read or give some information about the people who visited me. Everything is closed.
That is, in fact, you have as a medical secret.
Yes, you could say that this was spelled out in the contract with civilizations, and therefore, it definitely does not go anywhere in the outer fields. And many people are interested in what is happening with the stars. With some famous people, of course, this is closed information.
But you're talking about a contract. What kind of contract, and how was it concluded?
The energy contract. It is signed with all the students, and accordingly, it was signed with me initially. This is a range of tasks that the soul needs to perform in order to fulfill its task on Earth. Therefore, those students who reveal themselves, including me, sign a contractual contract. The contract carries information in order to fulfill these goals, objectives, and explore this contract.
In other words, in fact, every person incarnating on Earth fulfills some kind of contract.
Yes, of course. As I explained to civilization, every soul absolutely has a contract, including when I ask the question why they chose me. I'm so earthly, I'm in business, and why do I need this process at all? When I don't have an internal review to do it, I haven't studied it, I have no interest, and so on. I came to this literally there a year ago, when I accepted, and the acceptance gave me a further understanding of what it was created for. In general, if we talk about what a person lives for, he each has a contract, and the higher self signs a contract in order to pass events and generate certain energies. And all people follow the recorded programs that are given for this incarnation.
From what moment and event did you accept yourself like this?
Not so long ago. It probably happened maybe a year ago. Before that, I had a clear understanding of what it was for, and I didn't understand myself. But now it's a different process. First of all, I moved on. Secondly, I understand why these systems were created, why I direct people, and after this time, I understand how people change and clearly see people's awareness changing dramatically.
Communicating with you individually, people ask questions, well, and ask what they should do. Do you think they should strictly follow these instructions, or still rely on their own feelings and take responsibility for themselves?
In any case, if the soul led to contact, it doesn't matter to me or someone, then this is the definition of the soul, and the soul came for the definition of some tasks. Therefore, just like that, no event adds up. What concerns a person? Naturally, after receiving information, first of all, he must observe his inner process and follow what his inner state will lead him. If there is a review, there is no review, how it will behave. If there is a review, and accordingly, as if those energies of the field and the information that gives civilization are accepted, naturally, it means that he has found his egregor and is following this path of development. And if there is no review, respectively, probably either not ready, or another egregor will fill his tasks.
But how to understand this review or response? How does it feel?
And everything is according to the state of the soul. So either it's mine or it's not. I was going through this experience in the same way. When Serafim Sarovsky connected to me, I also did not understand what, for what, why, and passing only the experience, and a lot of time passed so that I realized and understood what everything was created for, and how to go further along this path.
You participate in trips to places of power, energy trips. Can you tell us about it? Why is this happening?
Yes, I participate and participate again according to my experience, what happened to me when I was sent to places of power, and when they said that I should be in this or that place at a certain time, and in order for the energy to work. Not quite awareness read these information, but at the same time I did what they said, because it was a new experience, and I followed this experience in order to understand. Going through this experience, I clearly understand why these systems were created, why I was sent, why I was in these places, and, of course, the state of consciousness, the level of energy. It's all in replacement and is still changing, and the purpose of this is to become aware of yourself, and again, to become aware of yourself, only through increasing the level of vibrations. Therefore, the places of power are created, so that people work out as much of the vibrational field as possible. Since the field system is calculated through energy, through megahertz and vibrations, what we call our language, respectively, the orientation is the same, so that they increase the level of their vibrations, and, accordingly, realize themselves differently than just earthly beings who eat, they drink, and do nothing else at the same time, and try to earn a living for the sake of living. The most important thing is to find yourself, and find your life interest, and in order to find it, you need to understand where to move, and in order to understand, you need to be vibrationally ready for these conscious states.
But how do these trips to places of power happen?
They occur in this way, that is, I ask civilizations again how to build my work schedule, since civilizations periodically tell me that I work little, and I have a system of tasks to bring as many people as possible to a new level of awareness, respectively, to a new level of quality of life through awareness. Therefore, I request my schedule, where to go, which people will gather, for what, with what tasks, goals, and from a certain program, we are already taking people out, so that they work out these fields and possible states of energy replenishment.
Right now we are on one of these trips.
Yes, this is a purely planned trip. This trip gives purification in most of the replenishment. Again, and the format of people who gather here are mostly more conscious people. In order for them to move further at their level, these programs were created in their awareness. Departure is a journey that gives us really some. These are states of new energies, new states of awareness. And we are working on it now.
You also conduct practices of activating the chakral system, so to speak.
Yes. This practice was not given immediately. This practice was given probably 2 years ago, and at the same time it was given when I was ready myself. At the same time, when I spoke initially. I did not even understand what it was about, and at the same time, did not understand what it gives and how it works, because I did not feel the energy field myself. But having passed the experience, taking this experience, passing the time, and now there is a clear understanding of what people are given for, with what goals, with what orientation, because the practice is now given completely different. This is not only the chakral systems. It is a practice for balancing a person, for a state of harmony. Now the disclosure of love is underway, open programs have been built. Therefore, here we can say that each program carries something with it. Therefore, each person finds his own, and finds it to the extent of his consciousness again.
And do you do these energy practices yourself?
When I'm with people, I'm in a flow, so I don't need classes. But if we talk about the fact that when I'm alone, I definitely do meditations, and I definitely do practices. Yes, there are such opportunities. I devote a little time to myself, but this happens very rarely because the workload is quite large. But nevertheless, I devote time to myself.
Well, in general, do you have time for yourself?
Very little. If we talk about 100% attitude, I devote 5 to 7% of my time to myself. no more. So it happened. And why, I ask, why I have such an order, the schedule of my schedule, and why my life path is like this. They explain this by the fact that each person comes here either for their own development or for the development of people. And my mission is that it is written in the contract that in order to develop people, my tasks are directed in this.
And how much more time do you plan to do this?
As it goes, as much as they lead, so much and I will lead. And in general, up to 83, my tasks will be precisely to guide, raise the level of people, build them up to a better state of the fields. I promise until 83.
That you will be on the channel until you are 83.
Yes.
Do your parenting abilities help?
They probably help indirectly because watching me, they naturally tend to other states in other programs are. They also travel with me and also do meditations and practices. Therefore, watching me, they naturally realize themselves differently than children who do not know and do not have such information, as it happens in my daily life. Therefore, watching me naturally, they develop with me.
Does it happen that your abilities interfere or frighten someone?
Yes, of course. I was scared of you myself. And when I went to the channel with Civilization, when I gave out certain signals, sounds, it was a kind of self-tuning that really interfered with my neighbors and myself, because I sang some notes, gave out some sounds. And this tuning was quite a long time, because the fields were high enough, and I could not receive translations, and I received translation only when I was in the water myself, and every evening I already had this system in order to reach the level of a constant state of information, receiving information through a channel. Naturally, I was in the water, and every evening I sat in the bathroom and filled it with water and received information. That's how I reached such a level of free communication.
Did you have a feeling that you were crazy?
Yes, of course. There were feelings, and I even turned to doctors and other healers when I already realized that I couldn't do anything with myself, because there was constantly information, pictures, constant talking to me, and constantly disturbing people around, because I had to tell them something. The process was complicated. I slept for 2 hours to go from one life to another was a very difficult process for me.
Are you in yourself now?
Yes, I'm in myself. I don't have a diagnosis. I'm not in myself, and I'm even happy. Moreover, I will say that I am happy with life, because I really, understand how people change based on what happens to them. And I change, and people change, and people's awareness changes, and they change their quality of life and work on themselves. Therefore, I clearly understand that I am in a conscious state, yes.
And when referring to doctors, they made some kind of diagnosis.
Yes, they did. Someone said that it was some kind of oxygen starvation due to the fact that there was surgery, that some processes took place. They said that yes, it could be a mild state of schizophrenia, mental changes, and so on. But it turned out that when I found peace, it was first of all brought me to the temple. And it turned out that the priest at that time, he was also a channel, and when he asked and said that God had her, well, you can calm down, and you are given information by beings who are really highly vibrational. And if you already have a teacher, you should follow this path. I also had an experience of visiting my grandmother. In general, there were different experiences, and at the same time the state was different. But this misunderstanding of what will happen next, and what happens to consciousness, and what happens to the state, while the channel is connected, it was hard, because I didn't understand where I was going, why I was going, why they were giving it to me. Therefore, now I absolutely feel at ease, and I am in comfort.
Please tell me what forms and formats of interaction with you there are for a person.
Interaction on the channel.
Well, how can I interact with you?
So, if we talk about the submission of information, then information is provided through any source. You can use Skype, you can use the phone. I don't have to be in the field with a person and read it if there is this person. I also have healing programs, but now, unfortunately, I do not use these data because I am very exhausted after healing and very rarely accept people in order to heal. To a greater extent, I am now focused on developing people in group states. These are groups. This is the development of vibrations. This is the state of information that give and transmit, in the form of channeling, what is called development for humanity. And in general, that's what I'm doing today. And of course, individual consultations that take place every day. I have very few days off. I am constantly at work.
Do you think that these individual consultations, in fact with higher powers, are an obligatory stage of development for each person?
For me, such an experience was precisely through the higher forces that I came out to develop, because before I didn't even understand what it was in principle. And people coming here after many years, they really change. Therefore, the development that occurs in people is clearly read, manifested, and they change dramatically. Therefore, through experience we come to these states. Therefore, here we can say that every person comes for something. He comes with his own goal, and if he sets goals for himself, to come for something, and he will definitely, I think, get a result from the consultation. And the task of civilization is only to direct, to show this path in order for a person to find himself.
You can say that it turns out that there is a format of an individual session with you, group practices, and, for example, trips to places of power.
Yes, I work in this mode, and to a greater extent group channeling is taking place now, which is now massively developing. At the same time, civilization says that this will be an even more active development in order for humanity to perceive information and reach a new level of development. Therefore, they give the information that is needed for newer information, which is still in the fields with us is not, well, as an active process of interaction between people. And at the same time, they give information of such a plan that is not yet read in the fields. Now the actual topic is the numbers, which are also being given quite actively. But we haven't studied this program yet. I think that soon humanity will learn to calculate each state of the numbers, and what they are given for, and how to manage them further.
Do you have a vision yourself? Do you see energy centers? And how do you see the world in general?
Yes, in the process of practicing, of course I observe. I have a vision both with my eyes closed and with my eyes open. In other words, I always see these projects, I see holograms, this is accompanied by information, so I don't pay attention to it anymore. In other words, it's like my life, and I freely find myself in it, and at the same time, it's not something new and unusual, this is the norm for me.
Well, can we say now, concluding our conversation, what is all this going to?
And it goes like this to one thing, in fact, people have already lost themselves, do not understand the meaning of life, do not understand what to do, why many end their young years, and people leave because they do not see their development, do not see tasks, goals, and so on. Therefore, there is only one meaning to develop and fill yourself with new programs in order to find a vital interest. Therefore, only development.
Can you please tell the person who sees you for the first time?
What's going on with him? The reaction is actually very different. Someone has a state of shock because they do not understand what kind of sounds I give out, and do not understand me right away because it is really necessary to accept with awareness my state that occurs during the consultation. But gradually, even those who enter into shock initially, they accept, realize, and gradually they already consider it as the norms of the state. Therefore, to say that the reaction is very different. It happens that they leave in such a stopper and do not understand themselves why they are here. And sometimes wow is kind of like oh, how cool it is, and I also want to find something in this truth and understand myself in this world. Therefore, what kind of consciousness, what tasks people are all different.
And can you remember any case of unexpected perception of you and your channel from someone else?
But they are so different. Someone was shouting there and saying, "Oh, how it happens, how impossible it is." Someone said that what was happening to her. She drinks, eats or smokes, but people have completely different conditions. The cases are so different, so interesting, so you can talk about it a lot.
Irina, we thank you for your time, for sharing this information with us, and I hope that I will be able to communicate with you personally more often.
You know, it's actually easier for me to be in the channel now, because I consider it my life, and the fact that we are conducting interviews now is only so that people understand why we're, because a lot of questions arise. But how did it happen? And what is it given for? So we tried to clarify this situation and tell you about it, that everything in this life changes so much, and people change and change through different tools. In my case, it was precisely the switching of awareness through the operation process, the processes of zeroing. People go through such states, through the loss of love, through fears, through diseases. Therefore, everyone has their own process. And in order to understand your process of these interactions of events, you need to move first of all, and you need to move in order to understand what to do next and how to find yourself in this world.
Once in front of the Creator, what do you say to Him?
I don't know. Harabata, I will be in front of the Creator. Each of you will be in this field. And everyone will have an answer that you have done on this earth, and that you have brought positive things to earth in order to get an active result for the further work of your soul. Therefore, to say that what kind of answer the mat will have only if there is something that you have filled in yourself for this life at home, for these software carriers of the earthly incarnation of Hirorabat, this is already the result of your life work.
And every person will turn out to be a recreator at some point.
Of course, yes.
And when will this happen?
Misha Mohana, when they turn off the system of one field and switch to another become.
That is, the moment between incarnations.
Damasha at the time of the transitional segments between incarnations, yes.
Now we have a connection with Hamilia.
Well, this process of enabling, it can always happen, because even in a dialogue with people, I can just connect, and this is the norm of the state. Therefore, when I do not find an answer in my state of mind, naturally, they connect. They help me get answers, and therefore, it is normal for me to switch in a single time and get some kind of answer.
That is, it turns out that socialization constantly understands and hears everything that you hear.
Constantly on the air, they are constantly with me, and when I even have some kind of misunderstanding process in my thoughts, naturally, they connect to me. All the reasons come through them, and I get involved in the processes, go further.
So it turns out that they are aware of and hear all your thoughts.
Yes, of course.
And how does it feel?
I don't have to ask and ask for some kind of answer if they feel my state with energy and give me some advice, yes.
In other words, you turn out to be such a hero of a reality show who is constantly monitored by a more highly developed entity, you know. In fact, it was very difficult for me to accept this state
Вы знаете,
initially,
на самом деле
because
мне
it
было
seemed
очень
to me
сложно
all the
принять это
time that
состояние
someone was
изначально,
with
потому
me.
что мне все время казалось, что со мной находится кто-то
I didn't
рядом.
even
Я
physically
даже
understand
оглядывалась,
what,
физически не
where,
понимала, что,
how. I
где,
was
как.
embarrassed to
Стеснялась
go to the
заходить в душ,
shower,
потому что
there
я
because I
понимала
understood
присутствие
the
какого-то
presence of some
поля.
kind of field.
Но
But consciousness perceives
сознание
so
настолько
much
сейчас
now that
воспринимает,
this
что
is
это
the
норма
norm of the state,
состояния, и
and
это
this
моя
is
жизнь
my life
уже.
already.
Irina, thank you.
I wish
Я
you
вам
all
всем желаю
development.
развития.